Hello and welcome to Google Apps 120, Intro to Drive and Drive Structure. Today we're going to cover what is the drive, what's the difference between an upload and a download. We'll look at is the drive a shared space versus a private place, as well as folder permissions, sharing permissions, and working with non-native file types. So let's begin. We're going to start here in Gmail because this is usually people's starting point when they enter the G Suite applications. You can get to your drive through the applications grid up here at the top right by clicking on the drive icon, or you can use your application shortcut drive.google.com. All right, so here we are in the Google Drive. When you talk to people about the Google Drive, it's important to make sure they understand what the drive is and what its purpose is. So what is the Google Drive? It is a combination storage device and full Office Suite combined in the cloud. When we talk about the cloud, we simply mean the internet. Those terms are interchangeable. Cloud and internet really mean the same thing. We just call it the cloud because it implies a container, right? It's the HPC part of the internet and no one else can get in there. So a lot of times that definition of the cloud needs to be given so that people aren't intimidated by that term. So it's a combination storage device and full Office Suite combined. You can upload things, just store stuff in there, or you can create a Google Doc, which is equivalent to Microsoft Word, Sheets, which is Google's answer to Excel, Slides, which is like PowerPoint, and then Forms, which is a survey application that connects to Sheets. So first thing I like to do is just show off some of the storage capacity in the Google Drive. And I like to give people a handy analogy to remember the difference between uploading and downloading. So if you're going to download, that's what people are accustomed to, right? You reach up into the cloud or the internet, you grab a copy, and you push it down into your computer or physical device. If you're going to upload, it's the reverse. You take files from your physical computer and device, and you push them up to the cloud or the internet for storage. So it's important not to assume that people know that difference between them. In this case, we have files that are on my physical computer or device, and I want to push them up to the cloud for storage so that I can access them from any device, anytime, anywhere. I can upload an individual file or an entire folder. So in this case, I'm just going to find some files here. So it's going to open up my downloads there. And I can use Command or Control to connect multiple files. Let's see here, I want this one, and let's open those. Also, I want some pictures in here. Let's see what we got here. We got a matching kitten and a bunny. We got a very happy monkey. And we got a very grumpy bird. Let's do that. There we go. Okay, so you can see that I get an upload list. And it tells me what files are uploading. And now they become a part of my main My Drive list. And none of these are Google files. This is an image, PDF, a Word document, an Excel file. You can store any kind of file in the Google Drive. And if you open a non-Google file type, it's going to open in this black box. Okay, you can see our matching kitty and bunny here for class today. And it opens in the black box, which means you're in a read-only view. You have to do something else to this to edit this item. So that's the storage aspect of the drive. And then I like to create a file. We're going to go to New and Google Doc here. Let's check that out. All right, it's important to convey to others that there is no naming convention inside the Google Drive. So it will let you name 100 documents, untitled document, which really doesn't help you later when you're trying to find it. So having a strong naming convention is the #1 way to be an efficient user of the Google Drive. If you have recall in mind when you name your items, you're going to have an easier time finding them. You want to give unique points of recall on this item. Like if you name everything with the letters HBC before you start, you're going to greatly complicate your search for this item because the letters HBC are going to be in everything, right? So you want to find some unique points of recall. So a date, for example, is a great way to make things unique. A name, an order number, then you can put the company name. All right, so I can start typing in the body of my message. As you can see, it does auto spell check using Chrome. You should be using Chrome for all of your Google applications, although they will work on any of the other browsers. There's no saving in the drive. That confuses the new user. There's no save button. There's no save command. It's saving every second. Every couple of minutes, it's making a revision history, which I can see in this little shortcut link at the top of the page. Click there. That's going to go into my revision history. I can see more detailed revisions. It usually will give me an option down here to see more detailed revisions if I had more info on here. But I can go to an earlier revision and restore it if I need to in the case that somebody messed it up. So the versions are saving, but I don't need to actively save it. I simply X out when I'm done, and that item becomes a part of my main My Drive list. Okay, so best practice in the Drive is to create a folder structure for organization. One of the things that confuses the new Drive user is that there is no organization inherent in the Google Drive. And it's not just for creating Office documents, it's for storage as well. So it just becomes this big unruly pile of files and folders that they have trouble managing. In the new, you can create a folder structure or hierarchy to help you stay organized. So that's best practice, to create a place for everything and everything in its place. This is where I also like to explain that the Google Drive is not a shared network drive. When you're talking to people about the Drive, most of them have a misconception that this is a community place and that we're all in there together. And that is not true. The Drive is an individual space that belongs to your email address. Everybody has their own private drive. Nobody else is in your drive except for you. And so the folder structure that you create here need only reflect your duties and your job unless you intend to share that folder. So since I'm a software trainer, I'm going to have folders that reflect applications that I train on. So I'll make one for docs, one for sheets, one for images, and then I'll make one for private. Okay. So now I can start cleaning this up. So this is a doc. These are images. There's my kitten and my bunny. That's a doc. That's a sheet. That's an image. That's a video that is actual production. I don't want to mess up there, so we'll leave it there for now. So this is what I would much prefer your Drive look like, where you make a place for everything, you keep everything in its place. And that serves as a backup in the case that you don't remember what you named something, or it was somebody else's and they changed the name of it. So you could say, oh gosh, I don't know what I named that thing, but I know that I put it in my docs folder because that's what I do with things like that. And you can find it in there. And that's just, again, a backup to help you find things. As you create this folder structure, you're going to get a little drop down right here that mirrors it. And of course you can have subfolders and you know, this can get crazy deep here. We don't care to do that right now. But Another place that becomes important is up here. This is the file path directory of where in the drive am I. And you can only see this file path directory for your own drive. If it's in somebody else's drive, it's not going to tell you where you can find it because it's just in their drive. That's all you need to know about it. So just make sure if you are inside a folder, then when you create, you understand that when you create or upload anything, it's not going to show up in my main My Drive list. It's going to be nestled inside of the Docs folder, which could be confusing. So it's a good idea to get into a heavy-handed habit of just clicking on My Drive before you create or upload anything. So that's My Drive, where things that you have created or uploaded are stored. You can see pretty much everything in My Drive is owned by me. Shared with Me is a view into other people's files or folders. You can see in Share with Me, nothing is owned by me. These are all other people's files. And what happens if I delete your all user list? Like, that looks important, right? Like, oops, just deleted your whole user list. Actually, it doesn't matter if you delete things from the Shared with Me, because only the owner of the file can delete it. The owner is the person who uploaded or created it. All that I really did was just remove it from my Shared with Me view. Okay, so you can't delete other people's files. They cannot delete yours. It simply removes them from that view. Now, if I'm going to frequently work with a file from Shared with Me, it's a good idea, or a folder, to add it to your drive, and then you can put it into a place that makes sense for you. So I already have a private folder, so maybe that's actually belongs to my Docs. So that's best practice. In Shared with Me, add it to your drive, and then you can put it into a place of access where it's easy for you to recall. The most frequently visited place in the drive is here, Recent. And this is what did you most recently create, upload, or modify in the order that you did so. If you want something to show up in the starred view, let's star Grumpy Bird here. There we go. You go to the More menu, just add a star. And you can see it here in your quick access view. That's all that starred is. It's up to you what you want to use that for. Right, so here in your trash will never empty. Please keep in mind that if you have collaborators on an item, that those collaborators can access that item from your trash until you purposefully delete it forever. HBC is a Google Apps Unlimited client, which means that you guys have an unlimited amount of files and folders that you can create and store. So storage is not going to be an issue, but just know that your trash will not empty unless you empty it manually. Last thing on this left-hand side is at the top left, you have a HBC logo. On every Google application, that is a command. That means take me home. So it just depends on what application you're in. For the drive, home is, of course, My Drive. That's just a little explanation of what's going on over on the left-hand side there. And so now, let's talk about searching for items inside the drive. So let's say that I'm looking for a document on a class that I teach. The word class is not a great search operator because it's too generic. I teach classes all day, every day, so of course that's going to yield a lot of results for me. So if I want to refine my search, then I need to add another term to help narrow that down. So I'm only looking for things about a Sheets class, and I'm only looking for classes for HBC, and I only want ones that have an outline. You can see how I can add multiple terms here and narrow this down until I find exactly what it is that I'm looking for. Okay. It gave me more results, but let's go back to just where that says the outline. There we go. Okay. So I can also use what's known as a search operator. Just like in Gmail, you can use search operators to help you look for mail. I can do owner : and just look for things that are owned by my coworker Solange. And then I can say, gosh, I only want things owned by Solange about sales. So you can see that a combination of search terms and search operators can help me quickly find what I'm looking for. I can also use this drop-down here to help me find these items. Just search on a specific file type or owner, in a specific place, has the words, etc. If I go down here to the bottom left to learn more, just scroll to the bottom. I get this option to look at advanced search in Google Drive. And this is a full list of everything that I can use to search inside the drive. So like quotes to find an exact phrase, owner : to : date range, etc. All right, so I feel confident that if you use a combination of the things I just told you about, you have a nice strong naming convention that you stick to, you create a folder structure, make a place for everything, keep everything in its place, you add files to your drive from the shared with me so that you can then clean them up into a place of access that makes sense to you. You understand that you can access files in your recent or starred views, and you know that you can use multiple search terms or operators in the drive search plus the drop-down. I feel really confident that you guys should be able to quickly and easily find any item that you're looking for inside the drive. All right, so you've been a really quiet group up to this point. I want to stop for a moment because we're about 20 minutes through and ask, do you guys have any questions on anything that I've covered so far in the drive? Is this all making sense to you? Again, you may be an advanced audience. I don't like to take the chance that you're not. Hopefully you're learning stuff. Somebody raised a hand. If you raise your hand, it generally means you want to speak out loud. I don't want to put you on the spot, so you can put that down if you don't want to speak out loud, but if you do want to ask a question, you leave it up and I will unmute you. So that hand is still up. I'm going to do it. I'm going to unmute you. All right. Glenn? Glenn, I unmuted you. Glenn, do you have a question?
Yes. What ID will we use in order to log into Google?
You should receive instructions on your username and login. In most cases, your email address is not going to change.
Okay.
So whatever banner you're under, whether it's Saks.com or HBC.com, Google just absorbs that domain. It becomes a Google domain.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to mute you back. Thanks for that, Glenn. Let's see if I have anybody else with their hand up. Do not. All right. So I'm going to keep going. Just keep in mind that in your questions section of your control panel, you can ask anything you like as well. All right, so let's talk about sharing permissions and permissions between different folders. So I can share at the overarching folder level. Right-click and share right there. I can click over here and choose share from there. I can click into a file and share from there. At the top right here, you can see that there is a lock on this item. That's because anything that I create or upload is by default private just to me. Please keep in mind that private on a work domain is a relative term. If you don't show up to work one day and then you never come back again, they can and will assume control of your account and transfer all of your items to another user. So just keep that in mind. But for all practical purposes, your drive is private. Nobody else can get in there. But I'd like to share this item, so I'm going to click on the share, and it does open a individual share menu, the default of which is edit, but I can give comment or view access as well. I go here to advanced, and you can see that it is on private, only I can access. I'd like to change that here in the change. And so here are my options. So I'm not going to talk about these two top options because these are probably going to be turned off. Please keep in mind that since we are in Core IT phase, you guys are really the early adopters for this. Not all the decisions about how everything is going to proceed have been made yet. So these two top sharing permissions might be off. It kind of depends. You can share with anyone at the entirety of HBC, so that means that anyone at HBC can find and access it, or just anybody that has the link. The default is that they can view, but you can also give edit and comment access. So I'm going to say anyone with the link can view and hit save. And that issues me a link. So I'd like to point out that this link is exactly the same as this link at the top of the page. So the URL in a Google Doc is the same as the share link. And it is a static link to an active document, which means that no matter what you do to this item, you do not need to reissue the link. You can change it, change the name, it doesn't matter. The link is static. The document updates no matter who makes changes in real time. So I'm going to add collaborator on there. Gives me a warning like, hey, Meg's outside of HBC, is that all right? I'll say yes, that's fine for now. All right, so now you can see that I have one collaborator. Once I've given somebody editor rights, I then have the option to transfer ownership of this file. If I transfer ownership of this file, I lose mine, because there's only one owner of a file or folder at any given time in the drive. The only way I can get it back is if they pass it to me in the sharing settings in exactly the way I gave it to them. So you want to make sure that you really mean it before you give somebody ownership over your files or folders. Down here are some security settings. If you check this first box, you can prevent others from sharing your item. The second box disables options to download, print, and copy, but only for commenters and viewers. If somebody is an editor, they can by default download, print, and copy your item. All right, so I'm going to do a demonstration that I consider to be the most important part of this class as far as sharing permissions is concerned. So you saw before that anyone with the link can view, and really it's just myself and my other account. So just two collaborators on this item. So what happens if I drop it into a widely shared folder? So give me just a moment. I'm going to add one of these here. And it'll show up in my drive. It's going to show up in my drive any minute now. Let's try that again. Oh, it's already on there. Come on, drive. Give it to me. Sorry about my glitch here. Let's try it again. There we go. Add. There we go. That one worked. All right. So I'm going to drop this into a widely shared folder. And that's going to give me a warning. Like, hey, everybody in this folder can see it. Is that all right? I'm going to say OK. And let's go in there and check that out and see what happened as far as the sharing permissions. All right, so before I had 2 collaborators, now I have 17 collaborators. If I go into the advanced here, remember before it was anyone with the link can view. Now it's opened up to anyone with the link can edit, as well as added 15 more collaborators. Now they don't have to be collaborators. I can take them off, like, oh gosh, not this Olya character here. Just take her off of there. Now keep in mind that it does not notify the people who are shared on a folder that something new has been added to it. So if you do, for whatever reason, happen to get past that warning accidentally and drop it into the wrong place, you can always just pull it right out. No one will be the wiser. Right. So now what happens if I move this out of a shared folder and into a private folder that's not shared with anyone? Let's do it, and we're going to see what happens. So I get a warning like, hey, people are going to lose access. I'll say, all right. And I'm going to go into the sharing settings and check that out. So now you can see that it's back to being shared with just myself and my other account. So there are some important takeaways from that demonstration. The first one is if I drop something into a shared folder, it will assume the sharing permissions and collaborators of that folder structure. Another lesson is Google's folder structures tend to open toward greater access, but it doesn't necessarily go the other direction. When I dropped it into a shared folder, it assumed all those collaborators. When I dropped it into a private folder, it didn't force it back to private or remove my individual collaborator. So whatever you put in here in the sharing settings has to be removed manually as well. All right, so I hope that clarifies a bit about sharing permissions if you didn't already know about all that stuff. So let's get in here and do a little bit of collaboration. As you can see, I have a normal cursor. This is your average word processing application. However, if somebody else gets in here, we'll see the little head pop up here. So give me just a moment. I'm going to hop in there in another account. And you'll see the other Meg hop in there. And you can see their image with a color corresponding with the cursor and who is making changes. So I can see who's making changes and say, stop it, Meg. We need to stop editing right now. Anybody's changes stay. So it's just whoever saved last. It's saving all the time. You can type over one another. You can collaborate with up to 50 people at one time, 50. You could share with up to 200 email addresses, but you can only actively collaborate with 50 people at one time. So I can also make a comment. So let's say that this is a client contract and I just don't like this phrase. So I'm going to highlight the text in question and I'm going to make a comment up here at the top about it. I say, what do you think about this phrase? I'm going to hit comment. Anybody else on this as an editor can get in here and reply and say, oh, I think it's fine, or I don't like it, or whatever it is. I can also use a plus followed by an email address. And call them into a sheet or document that they're not already on. Now, you can see that I made a mistake in that I called him in to comment and he didn't even have access. So it catches my mistake and says, hey, do you want him to comment or edit? So they can edit. And so now David is going to get a message in his account, his Gmail account, that says Meg wants you to collaborate on this item with her. He can respond directly to that email, no matter what email system he's on, and it will become a comment on this document. Or he can use the link provided and get in here and actually edit this. So let's say he gets in here and we're like, all right, issue resolved, I can resolve it. And it goes whoop, back up into the comments. I can just get it back and reopen it at any time should we need to revisit this. Also below the comments, it says editing. This is your mode. And the mode only applies to you. It doesn't matter how many people are in here. But you can put it in suggestion mode. Now my changes don't become a part of the document until someone accepts or rejects them. So somebody has to accept or reject them. It can be me. Or they can respond like, hey, I like your changes. Nice work. So if I accept it, it becomes a part of the document. If I reject it, it's just going to go away. So I'll go ahead and accept that. All right. So in the File menu, I can make a copy of this item. Now, there only ever exists one copy of an item in the drive at any specific time. It's not like you have a copy, I have a copy, we're all making a different copy. We're all inside the same exact item, depending on who's the owner, right? But you can make a copy of the item. That's the only time there ever is a copy is if you purposefully make one, like this. Go to make a copy, and I'd like to point some things out about the copy. So first it asks me, what do you want to name it? Where do you want to put it? Who do you want to share it with? I'm going to say, oh, that's fine. Now it opens a completely new document. The link for this document is now completely different than the original. These are not the same document. They have nothing to do with one another. So the copy has a new link, and in the copy, the comments are gone. And the revision history starts over again. So please keep in mind that if you share with somebody at the edit level, that they have full access to both the comments and the revision history on this item, if they are an editor. So you may need to make a clean client copy, right, before you share that with them. Right, so any questions on collaborating inside of Docs? I don't go over it in great detail today, especially with this audience, but got any questions on it? All right, I'm going to get out of here. All right, so now let's talk about working with non-native file types inside the Google Drive. Non-native just refers to the fact that it is not a Google document. It was created by some other application, in most cases Word or Excel. I'm going to look for a Word document, see if I have one to mess with here. There's one. So I'm going to open this up, and let's talk about a couple of scenarios that can happen when you're working with non-native file types. So it opens into the black box, which lets me know that it's a read-only view. You can see here, this is Grumpy Earl. You see internet's answer to Grumpy Cat. This is Grumpy Dog. And in this scenario, my boss shared a file with me. It's a Microsoft Word file. And he says, Meg, I need you to work on this, but you need to use Word. There's a special font there that you can't find anywhere else, and this needs to stay a Word document. So in this case, we're just using the drive as a storage device. He uploaded the file. Now I'm going to download it out. I download that file. If I click on it, it will open in its native application, which is Microsoft Word, and I save it. So I say, all right, boss, I made those changes. You check it out. And he opens it up, and he's like, I still see the dog. I thought you were going to change it to another animal. So can anybody tell me when I worked on it in Microsoft Word and I saved it, why are my changes not being reflected in the cloud? This is usually one of the questions that I give the audience if it's not too huge of an audience. So they can kind of understand the difference between working in the cloud and working on a desktop. Any takers in the question section? Why did my changes not reflect? I downloaded this out of the cloud. I saved it in Microsoft Word. Anyway, it's because it's a different doc when you download it. That's exactly right. The second that I downloaded it out of the cloud, I made a new version. I opened it in Word. I saved it to my hard drive. When I save it to my hard drive, that's not reflected in the cloud. And so I need some way to push the new version back up to the cloud. So I can, of course, just delete the old one and upload the new one. And that works fine, except when you upload something, it creates a specific link that's used for sharing. So it will disrupt the link of the original document, which in some cases that may not matter. In the case that it does, I'd like to preserve the link. There's a Manage Versions tool that Google uses for that. In these three dots, I can go here to Manage Versions and just upload the new version that I saved from my hard drive, and it will just replace it with the same name. So that's one scenario, using the drive as a storage device. In the second scenario, my boss says, hey Meg, I want you to actually convert this to a doc and work on it with a coworker. So I'm going to convert it, open it with Google Docs. While that opens, I want to show you what a conversion actually means in the drive. And here's the new copy that it opened. You can see that it doesn't actually convert. A conversion implies a change, right? It doesn't actually change anything. It just opens it with the corresponding application. And here we are. Client doesn't like the dog, so I'm going to put a new animal in there. Let's see what we got here. Let's use, I haven't used this happy monkey before. Let's use him. Surely it will upload any moment now. There we go. All right. So now that I've made the required change, I have a couple of ways to get this back to my boss. I can open sharing with the link and say, oh, here's the link, boss. I turn it into a Google Doc. My boss says, ooh, actually this client doesn't Google. You need it to be a Word document. So in the File menu, I can turn it right back into a Word document. And so now if I want to replace the original, I can use the Manage Versions tool and just upload that new one. My changes won't reflect. Well, they did. Usually you have to refresh the page. So the internet needs to cycle through before your changes will reflect. But you can see that this is the original Word document, and it's now been updated to the original version. So I realize that's not the easiest demonstration to follow or replicate, but you just have to try it yourself and fool around with the tool using, different Word files or Excel files. Now, if you convert an Excel spreadsheet to a Google Sheet, it should preserve all of your formulas, functions, formatting, bolds, frozen panes, any of that, except that it will not convert a macro. So don't try to use a sheet that has a macro. Of course, it won't hurt anything because it just opens it with Google, but your macro will not function inside of Google Sheets unless you write it again as AppScript. All right, so any questions up to this point so far? All right, so just a few more things. I wanted to talk about what a Google file actually consists of because users often don't understand this. A Google file in its true format will never actually be saved to your hard drive because a Google file, it consists of a URL. So if you want to save a Google file as a local file, it must convert to another file type before it can be stored locally. If you're inside the document, you have some options as to what to change it to. If you're in the drive and you use this quickie download link, it's going to automatically convert to a Microsoft Office file. So Docs goes to Word, Excel goes to Sheets, Slides goes to PowerPoint. When I say download, you can see it automatically converts to Word. But if I'm inside the document, I do have the option to download it as a variety of file types. All right, since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to show you Google Forms in case you are not familiar. If you want to create a form, you go to New and More, and then Forms. And a Google form is a survey. In this situation, I'm going to say, I'm taking attendance at the mandatory company meeting. All right. So my first question here is going to be, are you going to attend the company meeting? And it uses artificial intelligence, machine learning to say what kind of question it thinks that I want to add. I can say yes. I'm going to only give them the option of yes or explain yourself because it's a mandatory meeting, right? So yes, right here in my 3 dots, I can find a descriptor, and I'll say, if no, please explain. So I can add another option here, and I'll make this a required question to submit the form. I'm going to ask another question. What days will you attend? You can see that it's smart. It's detecting my speech, and it's changing to checkboxes, which is choose all that apply. But I do have other options. I can do just a short answer, a whole paragraph, multiple choice, choose just one, checkboxes, choose all that apply. I can give them an option to upload a file or a scale. In this case, I'm going to say choose all that apply, and I'll say Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And I'm not going to make this a required question because it's kind of rude to say, are you going to come to the meeting? And then they say no, and you say, what days do you attend? So I'm going to ask one final question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for the meeting? Okay, and so it detects, oh, she wants a scale. And put it at 10. I'm going to say 1 is meh, 10 is good. All right, so really that's all the data that I need to collect from these respondents. The top here, I have a color palette, so I can change it to match HBC. What is it? The red's probably good. You guys are red, yellow, and blue or something like that. Red, green, yellow, and blue. Here in the preview eyeball, I can take a look at it. What's it going to look like to respond it? I could take it. I'll just put in a few responses here. Am I going to go? Yes. I'm going to be there on Monday. I'm so excited. Am I going to go? No, I have to wash hair. And the last person says, yes, they're going. All the days. Not so excited. All right. So again, there's the color palette to change your color, preview eyeball to take a look and see what it looks like to respondents. You have some more options here in the settings, like do I want to have this survey be anonymous, or am I going to collect their email address? Google Forms are always anonymous unless you purposefully collect their email address or you ask their name and make it a required question. Otherwise, their response cannot be traced back to them. You can also restrict it to internal use or open it up for use in the public. Here in these 3 dots, I can add collaborators if I want someone to help me make this form. And that's the link at the top of the page. That form means as long as I open it up to sharing with the link, hey, come help me make this form that I'm making to create or to collect responses. If I want someone to actually take this form as a respondent, then that's here in the send. So I can send it via email or via link, but these are different. This is help me make the form here at the top of the page. This is I want you to take the form here in the send. So different thing, right? This is for respondents. Next to questions, I have responses. So it shows me a summary of my data. You see that 75% of those polled will be attending. I'm going to have the biggest crowd on Monday, and excitement levels kind of vary. I can go through individual responses, like, look here, Bob says he's not excited. Let's have a talk to him. And then if I click this green button, I can create a response spreadsheet. that opens up here. Now, here in here in Tools, I can go to Notification Rules, and this is something I think is really cool about Forms, I can be notified anytime somebody submits a form with an email. So it's cool to be able to collect the data in a variety of formats and then also receive an email the moment that data is submitted. Right? That's a useful combination there. And that brings us here to Google Sheets, which is a lot like Excel. Most of the major functions are going to be there in Sheets. You're able to collaborate in the same way with up to 50 people. You can create a comment, for example. A comment. The only difference with the comments is that in Sheets it does reduce to a small yellow corner so as to not conceal the surrounding cells. You can, of course, resolve that, respond to it. It puts a black dialog box over the sheets if I want to make sure it shows any comments on the sheet. Okay, so really that's what I have for you. Do you guys have questions on forms, sheets, collaborating inside of Docs? Anything like that? Let's see, Alex has a question. Alex, I'm going to unmute you. Hi, Alex, did you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is about sharing, and when you move something into a folder, I remember you said it pretty much grabs whatever the folder is set to, right? So if the folder is set to something like, everyone that has access to the folder can edit any of the files in the folder. If you move a file into that folder, it'll adopt those rights.
That's
what
right.
if you then want to prevent that file from being edited but keep it in the same folder?
Then you can go into it, like for example, let's just take that form response sheet that I had, and I'm going to drop it into this shared folder. So I want it in there, and I go in there. Again, they're not notified. I can simply go into the shared settings and alter that one specific file.
Okay, so after it adopts the settings, you would manually change it.
You can manually override anything, and they're not notified, so no one will know.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, good question, Alex. Thanks. Okay, so do we have any other questions? You can raise your tiny webinar hand. You can write me a question in the question section. But if you don't have questions, you don't want to stick around for questions, that is the end of the presentation. I'm going to send a survey in about an hour. Please take a moment to fill out that survey. I do hope that you all will fill it out. Your feedback is important. And again, when you fill out that survey, please fill it out with a mind towards what do our users see? Because I realize that I have a tech audience here, but I want to know, how do you feel about presenting this to the rest of the company? Because that's who you have to support. So thanks so much, guys. Have a wonderful day.